Just an incredible amount of hoax and speculations, making out a very educated woman seeking the truth, some sinister occultist with telekinesis and other supernatural powers. Let's try to understand what is wrong with the story of Helena Blavatsky. Helena Blavatsky. Helena was born in Ukraine, in the city of Dnipro, in a rather noble family. Her family tree leads almost to Rurik. The main direction of Helena's activity was the idea of uniting all religions into the universal doctrine by revealing the commonality of their deep essence and discovering the identity of the meanings of their symbols. All philosophies, including esoteric, all sciences, including occult, because the divine wisdom is about human divisions. This idea was embodied in her works called The Secret Doctrine. First of all, it is a synthesis of ideas of Hinduism, Buddhism, Kabbalah, Neoplatonism and Gnosticism from Helena's point of view. I'm not going to retell the secret doctrine here, but I want to give some interesting theses from the first part called Cosmogenesis in order to slightly intrigue all of you. According to Blavatsky, there is something that is eternal, space. Something that has always existed, the root matter, the primordial substance which is the conductor of every physical, psychic and mental phenomenon, and something that comes and goes, the great breath. The trinity of these three things is interpreted differently or even personified in different religions, as for example in Christianity. There is a single reality which precedes everything manifested. It has no attributes and expressed in two aspects. The first one, abstract space representing pure subjectivity. The second one, an abstract movement, representing the undisputed consciousness. Consciousness is impossible without movement. The alternation of day and night, life and death, inflow and outflow of the tides, inhalation and exhalation are some of the basic laws under which the entire cosmos works. There is an analogy between the cosmic processes and the individual processes of man. There is a basic identity of all souls with the universal soul. There is an obligatory wandering of every soul through a cycle of incarnations, or by necessity throughout the duration. I would like to remind you that these ideas are not some insights from another world or revelations received in a state of altered consciousness, but first of all Helena's conclusions based on colossal work on studying religions and ancient teachings of different countries of the world. It should be noted that while reading books of Helena catches the eye her high accuracy, scientific approach and ability to highlight the essence, throwing away all that is unnecessary. And on the other hand, on the internet and in the articles about Helena and in the comments to her publications by some other authors, you can see just an incredible amount of hoax and speculations, making out a very educated woman seeking the truth, some sinister occultist with telekinesis and other supernatural powers. Let's try to understand what is wrong with the story of Helena Blavatsky. The amazing story of her life certainly deserves a movie. You can find it on Wikipedia, and I'd like to focus on her legacy. In 1875, Helena became a co-founder of the Theosophical Society in New York. After several years, she established branches in India and some other countries. The society continues its activity to this day. The main motto of society is "There is no religion higher than the truth." One of the most important merits of Helena and Theosophists, in addition to systematization and optimization of a large layer of ancient knowledge of the peoples of the world, were the creation of a bridge between the cultures of East and West. For example, before the Theosophists, Europeans thought of India as a land of elephants and tea, where the primitive Indians live. And the Europeans have to teach them culture and dress them in normal human clothes. Then, about 10 years of Theosophical Society's activity, the Western world began to look at India as the home of the ancient spiritual knowledge of the inner world of man, whose inhabitants can teach the world a lot. And this is a huge shift in perception. Knowledge of yoga teaching, as we have it now, is largely formed by the Theosophist studies. It's also interesting to realize that the Theosophists have in many ways returned the ancient knowledge of the East back to the East. I will tell about it in a separate video, so subscribe. And did you know that there were a large number of Masons among Theosophists, which is also very logical. The Masons, as one of the chief representatives of Western esotericism and the society that creates ideas for hundreds of years to come, were well aware of the importance and revolutionary nature of the work that the Theosophists were engaged in. And it was an effective symbiosis. After the death of Blavatsky and Olcott, the Theosophical Society was headed by Annie Besant, head of the Masonic Order. We will talk about the Masons and Annie Besant's activity in a separate video. It should be mentioned that Helena had her own limitations in perception, paradigms that made her look at things from a specific perspective. The cultural context and the time in which she lived influenced a lot. After many years, it's no longer difficult for us to see the fallacy of many of her opinions. I will give some examples of the delusions we have now thanks to Blavatsky and her love for generalization. She gave the world the misconception that meditation means sitting in still position and turning off the thoughts. She called a huge variety of psychotechniques of ancient India and states of mind reached by them identical, and this point of view has become accepted in popular culture. She also described Hatha Yoga, body yoga, as a dark, demonic practice. Nowadays it sounds funny and weird. It was Blavatsky who formed a cautious, childish attitude to Tantra as from contact with something vicious, and she was the one who focused on the sexual component of Tantra, which actually takes only a small part in the Tantric teachings dedicated to human desires, relations, and development of sensitivity. In the worldview of Blavatsky, there is a tendency of non-acceptance of work with corporeality, and the position of intellectual work as something uplifted, as opposed to vicious and dirty practices of work with body and desires. Helena lived a very bright life. Most of her life she traveled, studied the world, studied in Tibet for 5 years with local Mahatmas, was letting herself what many could not afford at that time, as well as in recent times. So, not surprisingly, people felt mixed feelings and mythologized her a lot back then. In 1875, Helena became a co-founder of the Theosophical Society in New York. After several years, she established branches in India and some other countries. The society continues its activity to this day. The main motto of society is "There is no religion higher than the truth." Helena died in front of her desk, working on the third volume of her secret doctrine that was published after her death. In total, 4 books were planned. There is a museum of Helena Blavatsky in Dnipro city, native city of Helena. It's undeniable that Blavatsky was a very controversial person. That's why people either hate her and call her crazy, or extremely admire her personality and the stories of her life. But for me, it was interesting to focus on how much this woman has influenced human history. I hope I was able to inspire you to explore her work with an open mind. Or at least it was interesting to learn something new. Write your thoughts in the comments, subscribe to listen to new stories. See you soon, bye and have a good time.